All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to Texas Gulf Surfer, episode number 16.
Man, episode 16, unbelievable, man. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We have a great guest on tonight, man. This is a show all about surfing. Before I get started, man, I got to introduce my co-host. He is one cool cat, king of Surfside, Austin Campbell.
Right on. Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah, who do we got here tonight? We've been waiting for a minute to get you on here, Stefan.
Man, we got YBB himself,
yeah,
Stefan Lewis.
Let's go. Man, back here on the home turf, man.
Yeah, man, that's what we were talking about before. We were just, like the old days of, Surfside's kind of where your roots started and stuff like that, man.
Yeah, and I get emotional. I'm not going to be the first one to cry on here, but I get emotional. I did. I had to stop at Four Corners and, think about it.
This is your roots, brother.
Well, it's because I remember passing that surf shop and my mom would save $20. And that was a big deal to get to rent the surfboard. Sometimes we came and it was the little Fiesta grocery store sponge. And if it wasn't that, then, we were messing with Igloo, ice chest tops.
You know why this is so cool? Because a lot of people know you. You're Stefan Lewis. You're highly recognizable. You've done things renowned nationally and also here in Texas. But a lot of people don't know. You were just like a grom trying to get your mom to bring you down to the beach. And this is kind of where it all started for you.
Yeah.
So I find this kind of cool stuff, man.
Yeah, man, I actually knew this guy before he even knew how to surf, man.
Come on.
He was just like a BMX guy that was coming down to the beach hanging out with some crazy surfers, at some of the houses we just hung out with.
You guys got history, man.
Yeah, and I remember we'd paddle out sometime like Scott Mills.
Yeah,
and
Scott Mills
and some
crazy.
of the other guys. Yeah, shout out to Cougar.
Say something.
Yeah, Scott's crazy. And I remember I'd be like, oh man, you're gonna be pretty good, man. You should keep practicing.
Yeah.
And then I always said, and then one day I'm like, oh, this dude's like busting the air upside down, So yeah, it seems like you come a long ways from Surfside.
And like I said, when that moment was in my head as a kid, and then kind of getting into the 16-year-old driving to the beach, skipping school.
Right.
I had a NOAA radio, and it was like, okay, 3 days of 20, 25 mile an hour winds. Okay, let's go.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Everyone doesn't realize there was.
Right.
The surfing.net cam wasn't up.
Dude, we barely had cell phones.
Yeah.
So true.
No.
Yeah.
You could remove the battery from the cell phone.
Yeah.
Yes,
I always say it
remember
looked like a peanut or something. It looked like a peanut. Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, you were coming down and you learned to surf. So basically, Surfside
is
where you learned to
Surfside
surf.
Pier.
Yeah.
The water slide was behind it. That was
Mm-hmm.
that was a hit feature here.
You're probably one of the last generations that probably learned to surf there.
Agreed.
Because I'm a little bit older than you.
Yeah.
And so I learned to surf there, and then then it was gone. I guess
was
around
gone.
Ike really finished
it
it off.
out.
But I think Claudette
was the one that removed all the poles.
Yeah.
And then the shoals stayed there for a little while, but then they faded out.
Yeah.
You know what I love about the Surfside Pier? So many people got their start there. That was so many people that went around the world surfing, from you to Jimmy Evans, and the list goes on and on, started right there at that little pier. It's where we caught the bug, where we caught the stoke for
That's
the first time.
correct.
Isn't that weird?
And it's so funny because now that I look back on it, everywhere I go, I can understand the topography and why certain things are how they are. And that gathered sand shoals for so many years that were defined, and seeing them make Bob Hall right now is so fascinating, because we surfed it without it being there, and some of the very similar waves broke, but it didn't have that lateral current, so you could see the importance of how that lateral current goes down that pier and creates that shoulder for that really almost unmakeable wave without the pier being there. It has to have that current
that's why everywhere,
shoulder.
everywhere around the world, is the pier.
The pier,
everybody's
right.
surfing the pier.
Everybody
you know
does.
what I'm saying? So,
Man, so you're a local guy. You're one of us, which is cool. But you've been hubbing out of Corpus Christi for kind of how many years now?
It's been about 8.
About 8 years, man.
No, actually 9.
And
Because
just
Owen's 8, so 9 years.
just to update the viewing audience, you're just coming off of a highly contested battle royale in Waco, Texas, at the Pro-Am. And we had one of your good friends and rivals on last week, Gabriel Prusmack. And it was splitting hairs, and I think he was very happy to take that win from you. But I know you fought hard, man. Give us a little insight as to what that was like.
everybody said it was like
One of the best heats ever.
Man, every year has been, and I just happened to make it in the mix. And we had Noel. He forgot that Noel was in there. Noel still surfs at an elite level.
Sure he does.
Extremely hard to beat. Pablo, Shane Wiggins, always on top of his game. It was
doubt.
when we're all there. We're so stoked to be there, and I think that he's right. Like, we really measure ourselves to the nearest tenth, and it was all about, who could put it together without falling down. Because everyone, I feel, has somewhat of a basic, hey, I can compete at that level, and it really goes down. Or it comes down to someone making a mistake. And, it starts at a 10, so you go from a 10 down because of how perfect the wave is.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's how the scoring criteria works?
Yeah. So a high-risk maneuver in the very beginning and, would score higher than putting a high-risk maneuver at the end.
Right.
So, because you're not as willing to lose.
Right. So it's a high-risk contest kind of, right? You have to, don't mess up. But man, the cool thing about that wave is, it's consistent. Okay, so do you feel like, if you're in a, and I don't know how the contest goes there with it. So you're in like a group of people. There's like 1, 2, 3, and 4 wave.
No, it's 3 set.
So there's 3 waves per set.
So it's better than the 4 waves.
Okay.
It's got more power.
So I remember when we went in the beginning, when like the first couple times I went, it was a 3-wave set. I felt like the 3-wave sets were better than the 4. But so still, you get to pick your wave, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, or is it just like you get this wave?
No,
how's that work?
You cycle through 1, 2, 3 as if you're at 1, you go back to 2, and then to 3, and that person at 3
so
goes
everybody
to 1.
gets each wave.
Right. So
Gotcha.
6, you do 6 and 6. So
do you have a wave there that you feel
number
like?
2.
Everybody likes that number 2 wave in Waco.
On the 3-wave set, and it's not fair how much I get to surf there, but it's been a blessing. It's a lot of work. People think it's just a fun time, and you've seen it. It's
Dude, it's work.
It's work. But
even if you're having fun, it's work.
When I have the chance to dial the wave in, on number 2, you can really come back. You can take off at like 4.5 on the wall, because most people take off at 5 and 6. But you can take off 4.5 angled out, and you can get that first bottom turn and come straight up to get that first window wiper, and then get your 3 powerful turns and then a finisher. But if you mistime that first turn, there's like a delay in when you can do that first cutback. So it's almost like an eye glitch if you have to wait and do it.
Yep. Yeah, I've never liked wave 1 either. So
yeah, it's the first of the revolution.
So anyways, I always just ask people that they like, and then also I was curious about how that. So y'all all 3 get. So then, like, every person's probably going to have a specific wave that they're going to probably try their best maneuver on.
Yeah.
Like,
2 would be the first one, and then 3 is your backup, and 1 is just kind of like,
hopefully I don't need this one.
It could be like the Hail Mary of football if you had to. You could bust an air in the middle, but it's so fast and so hard to time because the revolution starts slow. It's got more water in front of it.
Yeah.
It's the one that moves all the water for the next 2.
Although with the 4-wave set, I kind of do like number 4.
Well,
it has some. Seems like
it's the best out of the 3.
It seems like it's going, like
2,
it's moving.
If you get used to riding 2 at a 3-wave set, number 2 doesn't feel the same on the 4-wave set.
Right.
But I'm a big fan of Waco, and I like them all, and you should always challenge yourself.
Yeah,
I
went one time with these group of guys, man, and we were going for surfing. We were going to surf for 4 hours, and then like about 2 hours in, I was like, hey, when are we going right? And this one guy was like, oh, yeah, we're just going left the whole time. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he said, yeah, look around. You're the only regular besides you and Margaret. And I said, nah, come on. And then another 30 minutes went by, and I looked at Stefan, and I said, we're really not going right? And he said, no, it's left the whole time. So we did 4 hours, 3.5 hours. I made about 3.5 hours of lefts.
No complaints.
Most lefts I ever did in my life, so probably. But yeah.
So that's the story of a goofy footer in Texas.
Yeah.
Everywhere you go.
Remember that day?
Yeah,
that was good stuff.
You never surround yourself with that many goofy footers.
Me and Margaret were the only people that were regular foot, and it was Now I'll say I think I probably did get better at backside.
Yeah.
No, I'm sure you did.
I think Waco's better on your backside.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
It's good. It's good. So man, tell us some of the stuff you've been doing, like since you've been down in court. You were here, you were surfing, man. You were just kind of a hoodlum, like the rest of us, right? You were kind of.
I did.
You did, and then you took off.
And then I dabbled in guided surf trips.
Yeah, like you were in California, then you were like Mexico or something,
I did some stuff at a surf place out there where I helped guide. The big yachts would pull up, and we would cater to the private housing and do tour stuff, and just be accommodating like a maitre d'. And you're turning on your personality, and you make it fun. You wake up with positivity every day. Some people don't want all that. They want to have that little
You are blessed, and you do something that to me seems like a dream job. And I'm sure you probably say it's not all a dream job. And this job was not available when I was growing up. And that's a surf coach and surf coaching. Man, when I grew up, my brother gave me a board and a bar wax, and he said, "Don't get in the way of any of my friends." And that was it. That was the coaching I got. But this is so cool what you do. And you have coached some real notable surfers, Zach Taylor, who just competed in the Stab High in Japan, and you're working with a lot of kids in the coastal bend, and I just think that is the coolest thing ever. How did you evolve into that? Because we want that job, me and Austin. Don't we?
I don't know. I got that job.
He's got that job.
It's a hard job, man. I got no, but he does. So like I do a lot of lessons, and I have had numerous people that I did coaching too. They were getting better. That I told them they didn't need lessons anymore.
Sure.
Then I'm like, you don't need lessons. You just need to surf. And they wanted me to get them better, and we did that. But for the most part, I usually do lessons with beginners because I like to really teach them the fundamentals, and then them just go out and do their thing. Versus you're doing a lot of you're taking people who are maybe already have the fundamentals and know how to surf, and you're giving them, maybe they want to compete, or even just get better, and you're kind of giving them the, the extra. And I've done that, but it's two different totally things because you're working with the same person over and over again. You are really their coach. I coached basketball for a long time, and you are their coach.
If they'll admit it, there's names you've mentioned on this podcast the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I feel like I give my time to them, and I'm not their coach. But I remember guys doing that for me, and I couldn't afford the clinics. I don't think it's that they can't afford it. I think it's just that I have a hard time not saying, drop your arm, open your shoulder. You've got the style, but we could accentuate it by just moving it by 2 more inches. So it's a natural blurt where...
Do some people ever get...
No. Because they do it, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, my God.
But some people, you don't have anybody that's ever like, well, I know how to surf, man.
Yeah, no, I think some of those kind of people. Okay, so nobody on the tour is that way. But some of their coaches can't surf like the people they coach.
I've told some guys out in the surf before, they're paddling, good surfers that are just as good or better than me, and I'm like, hey, bro, you should paddle with your feet together more instead of your feet hanging out the side of your board.
I say that all the time.
And they're like, well, I know how to paddle, and I'm like, I know you know how to paddle, but if you paddle with your feet together, you'll catch even more waves and you'll paddle even faster. And then a couple people have gone, hey, man, you were right.
Yeah.
So
that works.
Yeah. So you just got to tell people, and so that's what happens when you become a coach. You can't stop coaching, even if it's
100%.
Gotcha.
But you bring up that foot thing. That's when I become a little more stern in the water, because I know that that's the person going to hurt somebody. So I start off by saying hey, you're following the jetty out here, but I need you to know something. 1, your leash isn't done right. 2, your feet are hanging off the board. You can die out here.
Right.
So if you do go out here, you need to go past everybody else, and you need to go in a little bit.
Yeah.
Right.
And so I key in on the wide feet thing. I'm like, hey, come here. Just get it out of the way. Because there's been guys that are really good getting hit in the head, and it's unnecessary because we forget to speak up when we see something like that.
Right.
So
but your
happens.
focus is more one-on-one, like a personal trainer.
For sure.
But you're focusing just on that client and that person.
That's right.
Achieving different skill levels and whatever the goals and that type of thing.
It could be diet,
That's
calisthenics,
What's like the normal?
everything.
What's the normal if somebody comes out and says, "Hey, I want you to coach me"? Do you do like a week, a certain many days a week, or is it just? It depends on the person.
I build a personal program for what works, and
Gotcha.
I know what works as far as amateur programs
Gotcha.
and how being immersed in that. Obviously with Zach and being in California and seeing it from the behind the scenes professional look, I can see things that you could just see some different things, and
Right.
I pick up everything. I'm very observant.
Yes.
So every time I'm somewhere, I'm listening and I'm soaking up things, and then I add what I think works. And I think being able to get on a level with someone and get their neurological algorithms to kick on is also about like connecting with them as a person. So there's different connections with Zach than there would be with Cole. Even I have a little connection with Yates here and there where I'm like, I can push him and he's listening. And then Jackson, he's a certain way. Right. I talk to him more like a little nephew or son.
Right.
And he's receptive to it. So it's and some people like to be antagonized. And so you got to get on
challenge,
that.
Kind of like challenge.
Yeah, you got to take your program and adapt it to how people learn.
Okay.
Yeah.
Some people need to like kids with ADD. I have to go. Put your arm by your knee, look up. Put your arm by your knee, look up. What are you gonna do? Put your arm by your knee, look up. Yeah. And then halfway through the session, what do? Put your arm by your knee, look up. And then you turn it into a song, and then they do it. So now every time they go to do a cutback, they go put their arm, and then they put, like you're telling yourself. Like you're talking to yourself as you're surfing.
It's just technique. I always tell the kids.
Then you go to sensory.
Like, I'm like, look, I'm going to give you some techniques, and then you just got to practice those techniques and just go out there and, and do them. And that's a lot of it is just, it's like any other sport. I'm like, it's technique, practice, and confidence.
Right.
And once you get a good technique down and you practice that technique and then you get your confidence, then all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm pretty good. And that's what it is, man. And it's nice because, like, you see the progression of when you're, especially you take somebody, and you watch them get
you're only worth what you're able to bring to the table, and they know that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going because there's a good vibe and all that, I understand that too. But when you put yourself on, you're like, hey, come meet me, and there's no results. Like, there's always results over time. Like, it's inevitable not to have results. Like, you're showing up.
Well, I mean, some
quick results.
Some people need to be pushed harder too.
I don't want to go into things I can show you. Like, I can tell you about certain groms that are out there that have changed their style completely based on working on that ramp in the backyard. And the number one thing that I learned through raising a special needs son that's nonverbal, a lot of people don't know that, is that you have to learn how to tap into the harmony and sensory of what we're able to do as humans. So I've had to dig deep into the craziest, like, psychological connections to create, like, that motion.
And isn't that how you connect to kids anyway? You figured it out.
You adapt it because then you know that they can understand things. So if you watch Owen,
I feel like it's like just like you said, you got to each treating each one individually is very important.
Well, they got kids that have the starting of bipolar, or they may be ADD. You have some that are high on the spectrum. You have some that have Tourette's. You have, dude, if I could tell you,
surfing's so good for them, isn't
it? But they are the most talented surfers.
Interesting.
Okay, so go back through history and look at the ones that have really stuck out and that had the behavioral issues, substance abuse, because they're trying to deal with some other stuff.
Yeah.
Because,
very true.
But when they're reading waves, they're seeing an algorithm differently. And because we standardize what we think, all American talent is through mainstream sports, we forget to turn around and go, I'm sorry, he just double backflipped a bike. Everyone over there is running touchdowns. Just to give a little glory to the extreme sports.
Right. Yes.
No offense. I'm a mainstream sport guy too.
Yes.
But I'm just saying, like, there's an outlet for these kids because they have a crazy
Sometimes the reason they're doing that is because maybe they need a little something more,
to
extreme.
Focus on.
Yeah,
it produces more endorphins. Exactly. I grew up that way.
So you did. I mean, you skate a lot too.
Yeah.
Right? You skate a lot.
Transitional awareness, hypersensory. It's all that. Yeah.
I noticed that you do a lot of ramp skating with your students and your pupils. You do. I think you're getting so many hits. It's so like surfing.
The Carver boards, man, seem to be great for some of the.
What are those?
Some of the guys
it needs to be done on transition so that you can implement down carving in that transition, because flat roundhouses are cool. It's been, so what happens is we made fun of it, so it's hard to talk about it now. I like the regular skateboarding too. It's apex, you're going top to bottom and you're learning how to do 40-60 pressure, where the carver does give you that feeling of doing a roundhouse, but you have to put it on a grade to really get the feeling.
The flat's hard, and the only thing that the flat's good for, I think, for some of them, is actually getting that
to get it started,
the motion,
to get the motion,
pumping,
right?
Because sometimes in Texas you got to pump to get some speed.
Yeah. So, but it's more, it's linear and it's up and down,
when you
and
can get
people get that like weird like.
So I got a funny story.
Salsa move.
So Steve Mathias,
God,
he pulls up. He pulls up to.
Crazy.
He's crazy.
It's crazy.
So he pulls up to Les's house one day and he goes, "Bro, you're not gonna believe this.
Of course.
There's a skateboard and it's like a surfboard and you ride it like this." And I said, "Yeah, I got one at home. It's called a Carver." "No, you never seen this before. It's like this." And he pulls it out and shows it to me and he tries to ride it and he looked like you were talking about.
Yeah.
People look. And he comes back, pretty good for Steve.
Yeah, but he's talented, actually.
Yeah, he's a great surfer. So he comes back and he goes,
Yeah.
"Bro, did you see that?" And I said, "Yeah, I got one at home. Watch this." And I throw it down and I jump on it and I do like 3 or 4 pumps and I carve and I 3 or 4 pumps and another carve and come back. And he goes, "Bro, have you rode one of these before?"
Gosh,
and I'm like, "Yeah, I got one at home, Steve."
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so they're great for teaching the people that stuff like that.
So I do the skate and surf thing. And I learned this. I was told not to emphasize too much on our program that has obviously made one of the best young surfers in the world. But
yeah,
you're talking like you're basically starting at 7:30 and you're stopping at dark, and then you're taking a little break, eating some decent food, and then you're at the skate park by 8, and you're surfing or skating till 10:30. You're doing it every day, Monday through Sunday. There's no days off, and that's how you get to the apex of how you can translate right. And you're understanding transitional awareness on all levels, and your mind thinks like that. And so I think watching Sky Brown, because she's a part of the group, and some other kids. You're like, it's in front of you. Like, you're like, okay, so I see that's how that works. Like, it's not like they're just talented.
The science is married together finally with the surfing, and I love it.
Well, it's an Olympic sport.
Right.
BMX, surfing, skating. It finally made it in there, and I think now you have to train at that level. Calisthenics is a big program.
Right.
Well, extreme sports guys used to just be like crazy. Whatever.
It's punk rock.
Punk rock.
No effects. Yeah, Pennywise.
Didn't do anything.
Mouth,
and so now those guys are like, man, I got to train and exercise and eat right. And
so the longevity of the guys that were doing that and then got off of that are the true epitome of how that works. I think a lot of what I've experienced, and again through Waco and surfing with Kelly, and even Matt Keckley, who was definitely, and Bill Hartley, who still surfs at that level. And if you know anything about Kelly, those two guys were the biggest influence of Kelly Slater. I think he'd attest to that.
Yeah.
And so getting to surf around all those guys and seeing how that all translated over, and it's just like he said, I learned at that age that if I was going to be really good at 50, I needed to make all these changes and not go that way. Well, he's the proven fact.
True.
And every now and again, I've opened up a little line where I can bounce things off. Health-wise, I'll send, something out there and he'll write back and tell me like, yeah, that's good, or no, that,
What a great source of information.
But from that one Waco event that,
Isn't that funny?
And then obviously with Hartley and Keckley, that was like a connection. So
when you're not completely busy with training people and coaching people, taking care of your son, surfing, getting all of your waves, somehow or another you find time to qualify for the United States Surfing Championship, which you're going to jump on a plane and go to.
And I really...
So you're very competitive during the TGSA year. I've seen you hack it out there and you worked your way up. I'm proud of you. You're going off to show the Californians, baby, we're legit here in Texas.
Yeah. That's killer, yeah.
And Gabe's done it previous years,
No
along
doubt.
with Morgan and a few other
All
boys.
those guys.
I wish that everybody would still do it, because obviously it's nice to go out there. Competitive surfing is for the kids. If you haven't got it done by 16, there's a very rare chance. Like, if you're not from 9 to 13 is like
Yeah.
and then you got to have it. What we do is just to continue to encourage that drive and that killer instinct, and show you that it's forever. It's a lifestyle. It's not just like, oh, you're retired. You just said you were dunking or touching the rim outside, so you got to flex that every once in a while.
I'm going to be like,
it's health
60,
motivation.
something like, and I'm still like, well, I could touch the rim. Almost.
Well, that's what competing's like.
Yeah, no, I can't stop. I look. We had some Airbnbers staying upstairs, and some kids, and they asked Larry's son, and he said, you ain't talking about 1v1, and I said, yeah, but I can't let you win because it wouldn't be good for you.
I know.
So we just beat them. They were like 12 years old, but I'm like, well, I'm not going to let you win. And their parents watched. They were like, no, don't let them win.
They better not have a Yelp, yeah?
So, yeah. No, the way their parents, they would appreciate that we didn't let them win.
I mean, that's how we grew up.
But see, that was the coach in me. And then when I'm playing him, and I'm coaching him while I'm playing against him, he's whatever. So, but the same thing, yeah. But yeah, man. So you've been doing all kinds of stuff.
What does the future look like for Stefan Lewis?
I think
the immediate.
You're headed out there to the contest. When's that?
That's going to be from the 10th to the 15th, but the competition's from the 12th to 13th. So a little warm up, get adjusted, to the water temperature, acclimated, and just go out there with a game plan and just try to surf the best that you can in that little time limit, and. We've had good times and bad times where there's been waves or there hasn't been waves, and so it's just like anywhere. You just got to try to put it together.
Where's it going to be held at?
Oceanside Harbor. It's bounced around between the north side of the pier to the harbor. It even at one point was at Lowers before. Yeah. They were really stringent on how much time they gave them on their permit. So a lot of those anything, I believe it's under 16
right,
is all done at the harbor.
Right.
So you don't. They gave us an expression session last year. It was supposed to be the finals, but again, the event went if they have a down day or whatever,
right,
that takes precedence.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I think that's being broadcast, the U.S. Surfing Championship. So
I'm sure
people can go on and watch. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and you got to check that out. And all the kids, man, we encourage them.
Right.
I know Morgan and JR and Shane's got some kids under his wing that have, that we're all trying to be like, come on, man, let's go. Because that was the biggest thing. That's what drove us,
that was important.
And I've heard you guys talk about who's inspiring here on our coastline. And, Brett gets mentioned. I think Brett has shown us in a sense where he's really started focusing back on his health. And it's because he competed.
Yeah.
So then he's a big testament. I mean, he's really been a competitor.
100%.
I grew up watching Hildo and Gary Carter and
yeah, Gary's been back in the water. He's been here a lot, man.
He's getting it.
Yeah.
I remember I thought he was ancient back then.
No, man.
Mr. Smooth.
No, he was killing it,
Carter,
man. Matter of fact, I got a little picture of him. He was riding Pam's board, that Psycho we made her.
Yeah.
And he was, so he was, Gary's, man, he's always just been one of those guys that I think everybody just thought had great style.
Right.
So who inspires you? I mean, currently, growing up, like...
I would think outside of the Texas coast, I'm a big, firm believer on Kelly Slater because if you really understand the science and where he started and where he's ended up and you can relate to it by having the same sense to where we grew up. When we go somewhere and someone's like, where are you from? And you're like, I'm from Texas. And they're like, no way. And you're like, why? It's like, dude, if you learn how to read little waves, you can surf pretty well. I think there's a guy
100%.
out there. And I spent some time in Cocoa Beach on a project for NASA and it was like, I really tried to imagine Kelly surfing those waves.
Yeah.
And then you start to look and see that we've had a lot of talented guys come from our coastline,
no doubt,
that have utilized this place to even see the waves a little bit more,
from a different perspective. No doubt. Yeah, we put out a lot of good surfers, and we don't get the recognition for it because they leave, and they go to all places around the world and rip.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm sure you found it right away. Like when you once you get like you feel like you're pretty good here or whatever, and then you go somewhere else on a good wave, and you get like a couple days or even the first day, but a couple days of that real good wave, and you're like, man, better than I thought I was, and it's because you've been like, I always used to compare it like just because basketball, whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's like going and playing basketball on a crappy court or going in driving a race car on like a terrible racetrack. And you get really good at it, and then you go get on this like perfect racetrack, and you're like, man, I didn't know I could drive this car like this.
Yeah.
So
I think the number one thing is, and I feel like when we started this, I told you like, man, I knew where I came from, and this kind of a rough life, and then being able to go to a place like that and really utilize everything you learned along the way, and then harness in just on that, and then just going like, wow, I'm surfing next to this guy, and they're cool. They're stoked that I'm out here with them. I'm not on their level, but they're stoked that it's like, and that I think that's the ultimate. I've gotten to share some waves, in some conditions with some pretty heavy guys, and I felt like that was the ultimate quest to
hang with them,
to at least be able to be out there, and when to go sit down. I'll admit, I'll become a a stand watcher, like, hey, how's that?
Oh yeah, everybody gets humbled in the sport.
Sure. And I think you really have to pick where you want to be in life. I think before I had Owen and I was younger, I was like trying to prove something, and then now I'm just like, I know it's important because I know Owen's going to need me. Probably the rest of his life. And
that changes things about deciding how big a wave you are.
I think, try not to be selfish with that, because you ultimately want to push yourself, But I felt pretty comfortable this last year with Hopper and Pasquale's and doing some step-offs, and I was like, I could still get the step-offs is cheating, What Mike Myers does, y'all need to know.
Dude, Mike.
I want to be like Mike Myers when I grow up.
Mike is
one of my heroes for sure.
Dude, Mike is a Charger, man.
That's an inspiration.
Dude, ageless.
Sorry, I forgot about that.
Dude's
Mike
ageless.
Myers.
Him and Woody. They're just crazy,
dude. He's another one.
Oh yeah, crazy big waves.
Bruce Woods, man.
Let me just say this: that I am very grateful and thankful for guys like you and Morgan and JR and a handful of guys that have really taken this young generation under their wing. Back in the day, guys that were good surfers, we didn't want to tell you nothing. We didn't want you to know what we knew. Nobody shared secrets. Nobody shared information. But you guys are really developing the young people with the experiences you guys have developed, and I really like that. You didn't go in a closet. You said, no, let me give back to my sport.
I think mainly what we saw, and we all acknowledged it, and I know that we're telling you guys some real stuff here, because the evolution of the phone really took away the drive for young kids to stay in the game. And it's almost like we even have been out there where when we were their age, we never left. And we're looking at each other at our age now and going, we're still the ones out here. And everyone before us was like that.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not saying be frivolous with your time, be responsible, be structured, like we say. But you would still, like, any minute, you're like, hey, where are you guys at? You're playing Fortnite?
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah.
Dude, the surf's going off. And so that's one thing we've had to be soft with, but still encourage and antagonizing.
And it's getting better for sure now, but for a while there was less young surfers, and here especially there is.
Yes.
Than there was before. Like, TGSA had more, had separate divisions because there was just more people competing, more kids.
Right.
And here Surfside was way more young people in the past 3-4 years. And I'd like to think maybe me and Margaret, maybe had a little bit to do with that as far as like the school of surf.
No, you guys are killing it.
But I mean, for sure, surfing in general has gotten more popular and mainstream over the past,
the
Olympics and some other stuff. So that's pushing some other kids to see, even some of the movies, just pushing some of the kids to go out there and do it more.
Right.
So I am seeing more kids out here and more people that that we didn't teach or anything, that just came into the shop and said, hey, we want to learn to surf or something like that. So it is an upswing, but y'all are definitely helping, with just keeping those kids.
I agree.
Well, we were the generation going to the grocery store, and I know I'm going to leave you guys with this. We were going to the magazine aisle and looking at the magazines while our parents shopped, get the free cookie. And then we were like the BMX, the skate, Transworld, the surfer, all that. And then all we could think was, if you could afford it, you buy it. If you couldn't, you pulled the poster out of it and you ran out of there.
I was like, I remember being like, man, if I had those Vans he has on, I could probably do that trick.
It's like the pumps back in the day. Yeah.
So, but yeah, it was good, and I think, man, I think it's gonna be like everybody else. We're gonna have you on again for sure.
Sure.
You know what I'm saying? And
sure,
we're gonna
man.
do some events, and we've promised. So TGSA, we're gonna beat all the contests next year.
I really want to see that, because that's what's encouraging the growth. In the online stuff, and it really helps, because obviously that's how we're going to talk to these younger generations.
You'll be co-hosting quite a bit during those events.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, Jeff will be, and you know what?
We get tired.
I promised that I'm coming out of retirement.
Yes, he is.
He is.
Y'all heard that? Let's get the membership ready.
I'm getting out there, so I'm going to just be for fun or whatever, and and it's people like you. I see you and and Gabe, and then like Morgan, some other guys that I'm like, man, they're like my age and they're still trying to ride their shortboard. And so I'm like, maybe I could get out there and ride
You
my
can
shortboard.
compete,
And then I go to
Austin.
Waco, and I know I can ride my shortboard.
I saw those. I saw the videos. I follow along.
But I was just, but I just, you get FOMO when you're free surfing.
You said that. I know. I mean, I grew up here. I know. We always had a combination of a shortboard and a longboard here.
Yeah.
If you did, and you had to.
Oh, you do.
So, but yeah, we'll definitely have to have you again. And we're running low on time. Can you do me a favor, man? Can you just let our buddy Matt back there know we ran out of time for him today? Matthew McConaughey.
You trumped him, brother.
Just let him know we're sorry. Man.
I don't know why you guys use that as a reference because I always do that.
That's our buddy. He's always back there. We always run out of time for him. So.
He waits patiently, Matthew McConaughey in the green room.
And he gets done. He's all right.
We feed him well.
So, man, we'll get you on next time, Matt. We appreciate it.
It'd be a lot cooler if we could.
Yeah, it would.
Stefan Lewis, thank you very much
for
coming off.
Hey, and thanks. It's good to come full circle back home and just share this story. And everyone that's came on, you guys are big inspirations, and I love everybody, and I want our surf community to keep doing this because this is what we need. Let's go.
All right. Peace out, baby. Love you guys.
Woo!